What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how's it going, my man? How you doing?
Doing wonderful. I was watching a little bit of the national championship game before I come in here, and that's going about like I suspected.
How's it going? I haven't caught it. We were
Yeah,
out
right
today.
now I think it's 10-0 Indiana.
Oh wow, how, how's that quarterback looking out there? Is he doing all right?
Well, I was getting ready for the show for part of it, but yeah, they're dominant. But right now, a lot of ground game, and I mean that's the thing. They've caught the perfect storm, kind of like LSU, with Burrow's first year really, and Chase and all that talent on that team. Uh, that was the last team that I think has been as dominant as this team.
Hmm.
Indiana's steamrolling everybody.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Fernando Mendoza, guy that's going to be going in the draft, one of the few quarterbacks I think that are going that I think a lot of people are going to recognize their name. Yeah, kind of a weird year this has been, as far as the quarterback class. If you were to ask anybody last year or the year before, everybody was saying, hey, this isn't the year. You want to wait until the 2026 draft, the one that's
Yep.
in Pittsburgh. That's the one that's going to have all the quarterbacks, Manning, uh, the guy from Oregon. So many other guys are going to be coming out. This is the draft. You want to draft quarterbacks. Mighty how things have changed over one season. Does it concern you? The Steelers are in a time where this is basically rebuild. I doubt Aaron Rodgers is coming back unless maybe if the Steelers hire Mike McCartney, then maybe perhaps he does come back. But I doubt that's the case. There's a huge question mark there for the Pittsburgh Steelers and what are they going to do at the quarterback position. What are your thoughts on this upcoming draft and what the Steelers should do? Is the game plan still utilize all these draft picks to get a quarterback?
Oh, I don't think so. The only guy that I would even consider is Mendoza, and in the first, to trade, you're going to have to trade multiple firsts to get him, and there's
He's going
nobody
well.
other than Mendoza, and so for me, you take these picks. You got 22 or 23 free agents, depending on how you look at it. I think maybe 4 you really want back. The rest, I think you're going to have to replenish the roster with younger, faster players. That's how you do the rebuild. You rebuild. You get young, fast guys. Let them grow together. Go through the growing pains. Get you a good coach who knows how to handle a rebuild, who knows how to build a staff, who knows how to nurture a young quarterback, and how to deal with young players without putting them in the doghouse. You get those guys, and then after you're about 2 years into this, then you look at free agency and you spot fill holes that to accelerate your rebuild and to where you can compete for a championship. Because nowadays your window is like 5 years. It'll take you 2 years probably to get there, and then you might have a 5-year window, depending, before teams start picking off your coordinators and start picking off guys off your roster through free agency. So the Steelers are going to have to change their mindset. So our title tonight is this is the first part of the plan. You can't put any plan in action until they decide on who that head coach is going to
be. Yeah, no, I agree with you. The fact that they've interviewed a few folks, we'll kind of count down the list and kind of give our opinions on that list. But the fact that they haven't hired somebody with a lot of things coming up here relatively soon, does that kind of, open the curtain a little bit to where they're going? Maybe perhaps leaning towards somebody that's currently a coach somewhere that can't be hired yet or won't be hired yet because they don't want to be a distraction, such as I think Mike Shula or Shieldhouse or Haas. I think they've been interviewed. There's been the linkage there. Is there a possibility they're going to hire Shula, bring in Shieldhouse as the offensive coordinator, him being a passing game coordinator? Kind of a big jump for him to go from passing game coordinator to head coach, but I think he has had 2 interviews with the Cleveland Browns, so, you never know. But do you think that the reason why, hiring hasn't happened yet is because of that, or do you think it's more so that the Steelers are just taking their time with this decision, even though there's a lot that needs to be done? I mean, like you mentioned, we have a quarterback position that needs to be addressed. Gainwell, I think he was just on a 1-year contract. Uh,
Mhm.
the Steelers going to bring him back. If not, Caleb Johnson was a healthy scratch at the end of the year. Really wasn't anything throughout the entire year. So you probably have a question mark there at the running back position, and you still have the question mark at the wide receiver position. Things kind of have to get rolling, with an idea and a plan, so that way they're not left behind, once free agency starts. What are your thoughts?
So I'm hoping and praying that it's because the coaches they really are considering are still coaching
Yeah, me too.
with the Rams or whoever. Uh, because to me, that's the strongest candidates. I don't want, uh, I've heard Mike McCarthy. Absolutely not. I'm not interested. And somebody said it might be because they want Rodgers to come back. No, I don't. This is rebuild. I do not want Rodgers back. I don't want McCarthy because he's old school. It's no different than replacing Tomlin with the white version. I don't want McCarthy. I don't want old school thinking. That's been the problem for the Steelers from the top down for a while now. It's great to have legacy guys that only wear the Steeler uniform. That's not the way it is anymore. They got to get rid of that mindset. I actually am not really interested in a 3-4 anymore. It could be a 3-4 base and then change it up a lot, switch to some 4-3, or bring in a coaches 4-3. Kevin Smith at Still Curtain Network, or one of our colleagues, he wrote a really good article talking about the two different head coaches, Shula being one. He does the 3-4, and so does oh gosh, what's the name of the coach we used to have from the Vikings?
Flores.
Flores. And they both do a 3-4, but they do it differently. And here's the problem, Daniel. With this being a rebuild, and they're going to have to make so many changes, when you look at the roster, I don't want them to pick a coach based on the roster. I want them to pick a coach and then change the roster. If a guy fits, fine. If not, we can move him. Because they don't have too many franchise guys right now at any position. TJ Watt is no longer worth the amount of money that they're going to have to pay. And I read an article, they's talking about a team like the Patriots or another team. I can't remember what the other team was. They said that they might want TJ Watt because they're one pass rusher away and they might be willing to trade for him. I think it's a great idea because you don't need that salary on a rebuilding franchise. So there's so many things that go into this plan that we're talking about, and you can't do any of it until you know who your head coach is going to be. Find out his philosophy, find out who his coordinators are going to be, what his mission statement is, how he wants to build, and what kind of roster he wants. Because Chris Shula, you're going to have to improve team speed across the board on defense. You're going to have to totally revamp the defense to get faster. If it's Flores, it can be a little different. But even then, you're going to have to trust your coverage on the back end even more than you do right now. Because Shula throws in some zone in there, whereas Flores is more hard man. So what I'm saying is we really can only plan so far without knowing who the head coach is.
Right. But I think when you look at who they're asking, to interview or who they're interviewing, a lot of defensive minded coaches, coming from Mike Tomlin, it seems like they're going to end up, as much as we'd like change, I think they're going to end up with somebody that they're more familiar and comfortable with, which is why I think, Flores has gotten a second interview. He is a defensive minded coach. He is a guy that has been in the building that they like, that they're comfortable and probably are comfortable with him being around. As much as I probably do not like that idea, looking at the amount of defensive minded coaches that they are bringing in, I can't help but feel like they want to stay comfortable with what they know. And why not somebody that they've had in the building already, who they've thought of highly enough to interview at least twice for the head
But
coaching position?
comfortable is not always the right answer.
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
Sometimes we need to be uncomfortable.
I
Sometimes we
completely agree
need
with you.
guys that ain't yes men. Sometimes we need to say, okay, to really change things, we're going to have to make changes uh, philosophically within the organization. I think they need to change the mission statement. We've dealt with mediocrity forever. Everybody's like, well, you're going to hate it. You have your first losing season. I've been a fan a long time of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we had losing seasons. But I remember being excited seeing young guys progress. And, Rod Woodson had losing seasons as a player, Greg Lloyd and all them guys. And they had losing season. Barry Foster had a great year, but they had a losing season. But I enjoyed the competitiveness and watching these guys go out there and just have excellent seasons and careers and making memories in the Steeler uniform. I can deal with that as long as you see growth and you say, well, next year, if they put a guy here and here with free agency, draft here and here, it's like putting together a puzzle. It's like playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. There's excitement in that maybe you're not winning right now, but you see where this thing's heading, and it's heading in the right direction. The Steelers have just been doing this, flatlining forever. And nothing was changing and nothing was going to change. And I think the end of the season and the playoff game showed everybody that it's just not competitive football. It's not modernized. It's not up to snuff, and to where you could be a championship caliber team. The philosophy that they were trying to do by never using the word rebuild. That's in his interview. Rooney said he don't like the word rebuild. Well, guess what? You better get used to it because that's what it is. Now, I ain't saying you don't try to win games, Daniel. You try to win every game you go on the field, or you should. But it's more important to grow and let young guys make mistakes. Sometimes in life, if you're too scared to ever make a mistake, you never grow, do you?
Right.
You have to be able to say, okay, I made a mistake, but guess what? Smart players, good players learn from mistakes. If you're never allowed to make one, you never get any better.
No, I don't disagree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think that the move should be to, for change. But, this is what is the right move and what is the Rooney move. What is Rooney going to do?
That's
And
scary.
it is, because at the end of the day, if Mike Tomlin didn't step down, Mike Tomlin would still be the coach. There wouldn't be any change. And so it doesn't seem to me like he wants change. And, if he's not going to want change and he's wanting to, be in a realm of comfortability, and we look at the choices that he's gotten, in front of him, or the candidates here, and majority of them have been, defensive minded coaches, similar to Mike Tomlin being a defensive minded coach. I look at what Buffalo just did, by releasing Sean McDermott. They want to go in a different route.
Shocking, actually. Yeah.
Very shocking, yes, but they want to go in a different route.
There's a super chat, by the way.
Yes, yeah, no.
I would highlight it. I can't.
Yes, but with what they did, out there with Buffalo and releasing Sean McDermott, I think they also realize that offensively it's not working, and that's what needs to happen. And they won a playoff game. I don't. I would be surprised if they went with another defensive minded coach. I think they're going to go offensively, and I think this also impacts the Pittsburgh Steelers, because you look at the Steelers, you look at Buffalo, which is more of an attractive opportunity for you. Given the rosters, I would lean towards Buffalo. They got they got Josh Allen, they got they got a team that's up and coming. When you have an answer at the quarterback, when you have an answer at the quarterback position, it's always going to be something that's more of an attractive answer. Now maybe perhaps if the Steelers were picking in the top 5, maybe perhaps that would be a situation, for a new head coach coming in. I don't know. What do you think? This move with Buffalo, how do you feel that's going to, well, how do you feel it's going to impact the Steelers? And then we'll get to the super chat.
Buffalo, to me, outside of the Cleveland Browns, are snake bit. And what I mean is they had a roster of Hall of Fame players, literally some of the best players to play the game in their era. And they got the 4 straight Super Bowls, which is unbelievable. I mean, the Steelers could have done it twice, and injuries derailed them. But you look back, very few teams are that good for 4 years in a row. Even now with free agency, it's unheard of. But they find so many ways to lose. Just bad luck or bad karma or bad calls, which I think that was a bad call in that game. I'll be honest with you. We've got it down now to where they can justify calling anything a catch or not a catch. And it really started with the Jesse James thing, and now they've gotten really creative because it happened in the Buffalo game. It's an interception. It happened in the game yesterday, and it's not. So, I mean, now we're going to have this we're going to be talking about forever. But long story short, there's something about that franchise because Mark Levy was a heck of a coach. And the fact he didn't win one doesn't take away that he was a heck of a coach. Those guys, Jim Kelly was a heck of a quarterback. And we know Josh Allen's a heck of a quarterback. They've got closer to a franchise quarterback. The Steelers have no clue. They don't have anything resembling a franchise quarterback at this time. So, like you say, it could very well, somebody might be like, hey, I can take that. And they have enough faith that they can get past the jinx or the bad karma or whatever keeps happening to Buffalo. And they might think that's the more desirable position. Because I don't think anybody expects this next coach that the Steelers hire to be here for even a decade. I know the other guys have. Cowher would have been there longer, I think, if his wife hadn't got sick and, everything had happened. But because he finally won the Super Bowl. But, he walked away, and I understand why. But I don't think that's feasible anymore. That's what I'm saying. This whole plan, everything's going to have to change. So I don't think whoever they're talking to, and they've interviewed a few people now, are going into this thinking, I'm going to be there 20 years. I don't think they're thinking that way. I think that they're saying, well, the Steelers and the Rooneys will give me some time and give me patience and try to build the team in the image and according to my philosophy. But I don't think anybody should be looking at a decade because it might not happen ever again.
It may not, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of success like the other coaches, Tomlin, Cowher, and Noah have had. Well, no, I think Noel took a couple of years to get going, and this coach is probably going to need that. It's
Exactly.
definitely it's not going to be a situation like where when Tomlin took over, he took over a Super Bowl, talented team, a Super Bowl champion that just won the Super Bowl a couple of years before. It was, he had already gotten his answer as a quarterback at the quarterback position. It's a bit different.
It's changed, as you say, it's changed so much. Now the NFL is the biggest thing in the world. There's no sport bigger than the NFL. It's social media. It's on every channel. It's on every streaming service. Everybody has it on their phone. They're doing fantasy. They're doing, it's a huge entity, and nobody has patience anymore. Nobody. That's why I was losing my mind with the whole Tomlin situation. Is that it kept being the same thing over and over and over and over, and nothing was changing, and they wasn't willing to make any. I mean, I give the guy all the credit in the world for walking away because I still don't think Rooney had the balls to do it.
No, he said he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, I think Tomlin did us a favor, and I value that and I appreciate that because if you stay around long enough, what's the old saying? You'll go from being the hero to the villain. Yeah. That's what was happening.
Well, definitely, but I also think Tomlin knows football, and I think he knew that this team was a few steps away from being a contender again. That this was their best shot probably for a while. I mean, they could build back up, but there's just a lot of holes there. I think everybody could see that Aaron Rodgers at the end there, it just wasn't obviously Aaron Rodgers of old, but you know what flashes that he had earlier in the season, it was kind of just not there anymore. And you know, defense that was aging and you know, coming back a year older next year doesn't help. So, you know,
Here's what I
I think you
think
saw the writing on the wall.
I think Tomlin believed if you gave him a experienced veteran quarterback and you give him the line was improving, and you know he had his stars on defense, and if you bring in these older guys that knew how to play, and he didn't have to coach them up all the time, that he could put something together, and he did. He put together another 10-7 that gets blowed out in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, that is just the ceiling. I'm being honest. Without the stars that he inherited, without Big Ben, it's been a repetitive, the same thing over and over and over and over. He could get that was his ceiling. He could get a bunch of nobodies to that point.
Yeah.
You know, win a little bit more than you lose, win the close games late, you know. But that's not how you build a championship roster. And I think that last year was kind of, he realized, okay, it's not getting any better. And he realizes that the Rudies don't want to rebuild. And he didn't want to have to do a rebuild because he'd never been asked to do one. So it was the right thing for everybody involved.
Yeah. D has D65 comes in with $2 saying rebuilding does not mean tanking. We got to change. Well, you know what? I did say everything about, you know, Rooney being comfortable and maybe perhaps going with something that he knew. But he did, you know, just to kind of, you know, be fair, he did say that they're not going to retain any of the coaches unless the new head coach wants any of these guys on the staff. So this is a complete change. Something that's also different from when Mike Tomlin took over.
Yep.
When he took over, he also kept the majority of the coaching staff that was there before. Not this case, not this time around. And so that kind of talks about the faith that Arthur Smith had in the in the coaching staff that was there under Mike Tomlin. You know, even when he was asked about any coaches that could be up for the position, he said no. But with that being said, he is kind of completely rebuilding. You know, we're going to get a completely whole new coaching staff. I hope that also means more coaches.
Yeah, it has to.
You know, because they're going to need the help. This is going to be a complete rebuild. You know, any coaches do you think that may make it back? And, you know, I think a fan favorite, Danny Smith. You think any possibility that he comes back as a special teams coach? I know he was interviewed for Tampa Bay. I don't know if he got the position or not, but do you think it's going to be a complete rebuild? I know Arthur Smith also has had some interviews.
I think it needs to be. I don't think anybody should be back. Because I want the new coach to have his own coaching staff. I want them to hire more coaches. I want every coordinator to have a direct assistant because that's how it is nowadays. If you look, there's the passing game coordinator for the Rams, who I'll butcher his name every time, but they are talking to him. I don't think he needs to go to head coach. Not too many passing coordinators become head coach. Listen, being a head coach is a massive step up, even from being a coordinator for most guys. Because now everything is on you. You are who everybody's looking for for answers, to make the final decisions, to communicate directly with the GMs and the ownership. It is very taxing on you physically, mentally, on your family. That's why a lot of young guys in their early 30s are not ready to be the head coach, the guy in charge. Can you lead guys that might be in their 50s and you're in your 30s? Will they respect you? Do they listen to you? Leadership is a different animal. One of the coach candidates is Mentor. He's a defensive coordinator, a defensive minded guy, but they say he has great leadership skills. He's a guy who's, he's like a general. The men follow him. They listen to him. Young, older, it doesn't matter. He has a presence. And you know these people when you're in the room with them. If you're in the room with a guy, if they have that presence, you know it. That's why they hired Mike Tomlin, Daniel. I mean, they went from Bill Cowher, and they wasn't expected to lose Cowher, but they knew that there was a possibility because of some health concerns there with his wife, who was very ill. But they said Tomlin walked in, and he had all these ducks in a row. He was prepared for the interview. He had a plan. He had an incredible focus, and he had a presence. That word presence, there's a lot of P's in our title tonight, but patience is another one. There's a lot of P words, but presence is something that a head coach has to have, and that's how you can't demand respect, you earn respect. And I think Tomlin, the Steelers had a championship team. They just needed that guy to steer the ship, and Tomlin was the perfect hire. It's no longer like that. The search this time, they were not familiar with Tomlin at all, but he come in and blew him away in the interview. This time, I don't want him to be familiar with the guy. I don't care if it's Flores, but they got to see what's the plan. Is he going to be willing to hire quality coordinators? I don't want to puppet a defensive coordinator either. I know he's a great defensive mind, but you still got to have a quality coordinator who sometimes look at you, Daniel, and say, no, I don't think that's right. Let's discuss this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to have an offensive coordinator who's going to know that side of the ball because you don't. Then you got to have assistants like a passing game coordinator right next to these guys. So let's say you bring in Shula. Well, what if you bring in he goes from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator, realizing he can come in with Shula and they would have that familiarity, gives you a better chance of success in what you're looking for in the draft. What your next steps are going to be. And his plan should be to get a head coaching job in the near future. I don't want a guy that's going to want to come in and be the offensive defensive coordinator and plan on being around 5 years. You want to be so good you're competing for championships and you're in high demand around the league. I mean, that's how I feel about it. What do you think?
Well, I agree with the leadership aspect, and I agree with a lot with what you're saying. I just don't like the fact that it's most likely going to be a defensive-minded coach, and I'll explain why when we get back from a few words with our break. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to leave you guys in suspense. We'll take a few words, and we'll be right back. Yeah, we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. Before we get back into the content or the conversation, I want to let you guys know about our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out when you're done listening to this podcast. If you're only watching us on YouTube, you're missing out on a lot of the audio-only content. That is on SteelCurtainNetwork.com and everywhere else you can find your podcast. Just search Steel Curtain Network. You'll find mine, State of the Steelers, that airs out on Saturdays at 11 a.m. You don't want to miss it. Now, for me, when it comes to why I'd prefer an offensive-minded coach at this moment, the great leadership and everything else, is because let's say you go Shula, Shieldhouse is already getting all of these looks. He's already getting, interviews. But let's just say he decides to become the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he does well. They pick up somebody, they do well, and they get a new quarterback. They're developing him. Maybe it's even Will Howard. And then now somebody plucks Shieldhouse off. Now you have Shula having to go and find another offensive coordinator. Now, him having to find another offensive coordinator is going to be difficult because, not so much difficult, but now you have to come up with a situation where you're looking for somebody that has a similar offense. Or are they going to come in with a completely new offense? If you go with an offensive-minded coordinator or coach, the coordinator is going to be running that guy's offense, what you're going to be developing. And so if, for instance, the Steelers do well and somebody plucks the offensive coordinator, the next coordinator that's coming in is not implementing their own offense. They're still running that coach's offense, and much less of an issue as far as when it comes to changing a lot of different things when it comes to, developing a young quarterback. So even if a young quarterback goes through a different coaches, it's the same game plan. It's the same offense. It's the head coach's offense. I just feel like that's probably that would be the better decision. Plus, defensive minded coaches, they stay longer. It's an offensive minded league, and so you could get yourself a really good defensive minded head coach or a candidate as a defensive coordinator, and be pretty strong there. I think that I don't know. What are you? Those are my 2 cents on it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've said all along I want an offensive minded head coach. Uh, for some of the reasons you said, uh, I said Kubiak
Yeah,
on Pump Your Brakes on Wednesday because Big G, he wants Shula. And I would say Kubiak because I want the offensive mind. But again, regardless of which way they go, I want two quality coordinators. But everybody's got to listen. What I'm saying is, I also want another direct assistant to both of them. And this has been done many, many times. Keith Butler was Dick LeBeau's right hand man. And when LeBeau left, Butler went up. When you see these guys in other places, the offensive coordinator gets a head coaching position, they promote the guy who was his assistant. And they stick with that philosophy. He has some new ideas, I'm sure. And he puts out a little bit of new stuff and adds to it. And that's why you want talented young assistants to the coordinators. But that's how you do it. That's how you have a coaching tree, something Tomlin's never had. It was just a pole, and Tomlin sitting at the top. There wasn't no limbs. You look at the Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh had no ego. Bill Walsh was so brilliant that all the guys under him wanted to be like him and wanted to learn from him. They did, and they went on and had success elsewhere. Shanahan, other guys that's had great coaching trees. Tomlin's tree was a stick because nobody wanted anybody because all you're doing is they're going to come and repeat exactly what Tomlin said. We joked many times about a family member of mine who was incredibly close with his mother. If you ever wanted to know what his mom thought about something, all you have to do is ask him because he will repeat verbatim exactly what she would say because that's how big an influence that she was on him. That's what being working for Mike Tomlin has become. That the guys who leave, nobody wants it because they already know what you're going to get because all they are is a Tomlin disciple, a clone. And nobody's that excited about that because it's not about schematics. He was the ultimate cheerleader, but he wasn't a great schematics, X's and O's coach. He's a leader of men on and off the field, but he's not a modernized, schematically up to date and a proven winner that way. And that's why we have no coaching tree to speak of under Tomlin. I believe that not only do they have to spend more money because they'll have more money, get you the quality head coach, pay for quality coordinators, and add assistants and more coaches down the line. That way, when you do lose them because they're in high demand, you can replace them.
yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It's just you mentioned Keith Butler replacing LeBeau, and I mean, Keith did an all right job. He just wasn't LeBeau, and I just think that, like I mentioned, defensive coordinators aren't getting plucked off of these teams left and right. Now, maybe now that the Steelers are looking for a head coach, that you might get one that comes off the board.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're looking for the next offensive mind, the next team that's going to be able to put up numbers. Analytics has been a big part of today's NFL game, and I think it's EPA, which is like explosive play average
Yeah.
or whatever. I mean, I don't understand the math behind it, but the more explosive plays now is what makes a difference. I think it was one of these coordinators, head coaches, offensive minded guys who came up with a stat that said that it used to be turnovers. The team that didn't have the most turnovers or had
Well,
the least
I never
turnovers
liked the
won the
turnover.
game.
No.
That's what it used to be, but that's no
Yeah.
longer the case. That's no
No.
longer the stat. It's EPA. That's
Give
the
me
team
three
that's
and
winning
out,
that.
3 and out and a punt, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
so
if your defense could get 3 and outs, get off the field, give the ball back to your explosive offense, I'm happy. Let's look at it
yeah.
this way, Daniel. We say, well, the game now is modernized. It's all about the offense. And I agree. And the Steelers have been bad since Ben retired. And even a little before that. They need new offensive philosophy and innovative thinking. But let's look
Yeah.
at it. Who's the 4 teams left in the playoffs? I don't think there's a team of the 4 you'd say they're an offensive juggernaut and it's all offense. Honestly, I think all 4 of them, they got there because of their defense. It's a balance. And these teams have balance. Now, the Broncos have got problems because of Nick's injury.
Yeah.
The Patriots rebuilt quick because they got their franchise quarterback a couple years ago, drafted him, got their head coach that I wanted last year, and bam, the defense is excellent. They're in there. And then you look at the NFC. I mean, come on, Sam Darnold, man, that slipper's going to slide off at any moment, I think, because I don't see Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl, but we'll see what happens. But you got Stafford, and that's a heck of an offense. But you look at that defense, and they got a very good front, and they're a very solid defense. So, regardless of who they go with, they have to finally have balance. Something they never had under Tomlin. They was either all offense, towards the end of Ben's time, and before that it was predominantly defense. And then guys like Palomalo, some of the guys got older.
Yeah.
And then it was all killer bees. But the Steelers have got to finally commit and have the right coaching staff come in that's going to bring balance to the team.
Yeah, no, I hope they get it. We'll see. I mean, I'm looking at the candidates here, and I know you mentioned Kubiak. Which Kubiak? The one from Seattle or San Francisco?
Well, the one from San Francisco, he's the offensive coordinator, isn't he?
Clay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one they've talked to already, if I ain't mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I don't know why I said that guy. But so
I agree with you. I want an offensive minded guy.
Right. So with Kubiak, I know there's been some talk there that maybe he brings in a quarterback who he's familiar with. One Mac Jones might be somebody who's available. How would you feel about that Kubiak and Mac Jones duo coming to Pittsburgh for at least a year until next year's draft? And then, if it works out with Mac Jones, you find a diamond in the rough, great. If not, you've positioned yourself for a better draft next year, for that quarterback position. Would you be down for that combination in Pittsburgh?
I'm not a huge Mac Jones fan. To me, he's kind of like Kenny Pickett 2.0. I think that he's been in a better situation and a better system there with San Francisco than, he had a quality coordinator and offense and some, more positional skill talent that Pickett had to work with. But you're going to have a bridge guy. Like I said, I don't see anybody in the draft. I said on the Pump Your Brakes the other night, I can see Will Howard bring in a guy like Jones, especially if you bring in a guy like Kubiak and you want somebody familiar, let them compete. Maybe draft a guy like Shambliss out of Ole Miss. We've seen him have an excellent season and an exciting playoff run there and, see what he can do. I think he's going to be shorter than his listed height. So, that might cause him to struggle a little bit at the pro level. But we know mobility is important. And Will Howard can move. Jones, not so much, but Shambliss can definitely move. So, like I said, Magid, the young backup quarterback for the Chicago Bears. If I was Khan and Waddle, I'd be reaching out and seeing would they be willing to move him for one of these draft picks that the Steelers have. Because I think he has the intangibles, the size, the arm, the mobility to be a NFL starting quarterback. And now he's stuck behind Williams in Chicago. And Williams is a star. He become a star this year in Ben Johnson's offense. So they might be willing to move him, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
And there's options out there. But whoever the quarterback is this year, more than likely isn't the long-term answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they would be either. I'm all for Will Howard, getting an opportunity to compete, but I don't think anybody should be putting, a lot of eggs in that basket as being like, all right, we're going to go with Will Howard this year, and Mason's going to back him
Not
up.
all of them.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't. I think at the end of the day, if Mike Tomlin had some confidence in Will Howard, I don't think he would have resigned. you know, being honest, I think if he thought that there was an answer there, franchise quarterback that he could bring in, that he had somebody like that, seeing him in practice every day.
Well, let's be honest.
I don't think he resigns.
I think you might agree with me on this. Tomlin didn't want any young guys playing, not in those positions. I mean, he didn't like Roman Wilson because young receivers they didn't make the wrong choice. Like a lot of our option routes. If the defense does this, you break out. If it does that, you break in. There's choices you got to make on the fly. So what do we know about young guys? Especially as they're learning the quarterback and the quarterback's learning them, they make mistakes. You couldn't do that under Tomlin. You make a mistake, you're on the bench. You're a quarterback, you turn over, you throw interceptions, you're on the bench. You're a running back, you fumble the ball, you're on the bench. That he does not have the mindset to lead a rebuild and develop young talent. So I don't think it was just Will Howard. I think he didn't like the fact that he's seen a lot of the old guys are not going to be brought back. And he didn't want to start over with all the young guys. And I don't blame him. I mean, what else do you got to prove after 19 years? As I said, the longer you stay around, the worse your legacy gets tarnished. People forget who watched Noel in the late 80s and early 90s. They forget what a great coach he was in the 70s and early 80s. So it's easy to forget. And so I think that, especially for younger fans, all they remember is Tomlin losing 7 playoff games in a row. And that puts him right there with Marvin Lewis and Schottenheimer and some of the biggest losers ever. So you don't want that to be part of your Hall of Fame speech.
No, you don't, and you're right. I think he probably did see the writing on the wall, and which kind of leads me to like what I said. If he felt that he had an answer there, a diamond in the rough, somebody that can compete, I think he would have probably stuck around. But I think he saw the problems that were coming ahead. The fan base has already turned on him. Can you imagine if, even though next year. I would not say. I would say this. I would bet on that Vegas has less than 8 wins for the Steelers. They're predicting a losing record.
I would say so. Yeah.
For next year, whether Tomlin was the coach or not, I think that was going to happen. And I think the fan base's reaction to that is going to be different throughout the year. If we have a new coordinator or a new coach coming in, obviously we are, but a team that's young and rebuilding, there's an understanding there that there are going to be some growing pains. With Tomlin there, I think that the fan base is just going to get uglier. If he would have came back next year and they would have still had the same struggle, and so I think that he foresaw that and decided, hey, it's better just to bow out and.
I'll say this, Daniel. If I liked Adam Thielen a lot, and I wanted him to be a Pittsburgh Steeler 3 years ago. Yeah. Well, we got the guy walking out the door after he got released by the Vikings. We got Valdez-Scantling, a few years too late, even though he was never anywhere as good as Thielen. He had some big play potential at one point. They got him past the expiration date. if Roman Wilson is not better than them two receivers and deserved more time and more opportunities and more targets, then they need to take a look at all their scouts and a hard look at Khan and at Waddle. Now, looking at their success record in their 3 drafts, we don't know about Broderick Jones. The jury's still out. But they've had a lot of hits. But one of the biggest misses would be Roman Wilson. And watching what I watched of him, I don't think it's Roman Wilson. I think it's the environment. I think it's expectations. And I think it's not a culture that is where you cultivates growth in a young player, and you have the feeling of freedom that if you do make a mistake, that you're not going to be playing on the end of the bench or inactive the rest of the year. It's uncalled for. I'm surprised that Keyshawn Johnson got another opportunity after what he did against Seattle and let the kickoff go in the end zone. But he finally did because they had to use him. But they didn't use him much, did they? Right. So, I've seen players make mistakes. Barry Foster made one of the biggest ones ever. He did that exact same thing against the Niners. I think it was at 84. And give up a touchdown because he didn't fill the kickoff. And then he went on to have one of the best seasons in Steeler history for a running back. You got to give a guy a chance. And it just wasn't going to happen under the previous coaching regime.
Yeah. Don't disagree with you there. And you're right. They've had some better hits than not. I was talking about, some of the roster movement, that we're probably going to see. And I'm going to name out some names, and I want to know if you think they'll still be here in Pittsburgh next year. We're going to start off with Jalen Ramsey. Do you think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2026?
Yeah, I think it. I think he needs to move to safety. He has that versatility that you can't move him around. But I think his full-time, more effective position will be safety. And I think he still has value. Maybe one more year at the price, and then they'll have to take a look at it. But yeah, I do think he'll be back.
What about Asante Samuel?
I like Samuel as a cover guy. I would like an upgrade because I don't trust Samuel's health. And I think he's a bad hit away from being out of the league. And I don't like his tackling. But I think he has some value, so he could return.
He'll return. Yeah, I think I'm like 50-50 on him. Jalen Ramsey, I'm also, more likely that he's going to return. I think it kind of depends on, the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they go with the head coach and who they get at the quarterback position. I'm not sure if Ramsey's going to want to be on a team that's completely rebuilding.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So it's going to be on, what he wants to do.
I know on him
age.
too. Yeah.
But if he wants to be back and he's willing to move to the safety position, I think he's going to be back. What about the other safety that joined the Steelers mid-year, Kyle Duggar?
Well, you got Elliott. As far as I know, still under contract. I think Duggar has value if the price is right.
Yeah. I saw more Clark at the end of the year, out there than Duggar. I thought that was interesting. I think he was making some mental errors. I'm actually leaning towards he's not going to be on the team next year.
That's possible because Clark is limited.
Yeah, but I think they may pick up another safety out there.
Yeah.
But I don't foresee Duggar being out there, next year. What about Patrick Queen? I think he's on his last year of his contract. Is he coming back?
I think a lot of the issues. I still don't think he should be the green dot. I like what I think he played harder this year. And he was doing a lot of chasing down and running down until the line started to do better against the run later in the year. So I think he'll probably play out the last year.
I do too. I don't think his contract is overly expensive, and maybe perhaps we see a little bit more Peyton Wilson out there.
Yeah.
Uh, with the green dot. Y- I think when it came to Queen, even in Baltimore, once they took the green dot off of him, I think he played better there.
Yeah.
So, but he's I think if a middle linebacker pops up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and make a move, because the Steelers typically don't guarantee any money in the last
Yeah.
season, and so if they wanted to get off of it, I'm fairly positive they can.
And if he's
It's-
got 1 year, you got to play it for the future too. So
exactly. And so, let's see, Cam Hayward.
I mean, I think Cam had a great season. He's no longer what you call dominant end.
Mhm.
He's a dominant tackle. I thought he played hard in the playoff game, more than about anybody else. He's a great run defender. He's very strong still. That's why I said he could move like Lulu did, and move to nose tackle, because Hayward's incredibly strong. He just don't have the burst to be a pass rusher anymore, and so he collapses the pocket well though.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he can make enough money to feed his family. Not getting the playoff bonuses and stuff of that nature. So, and I don't know if he wants to play for the Steelers without Tomlin.
I think there's a good possibility he ends up retiring. Especially if the Steelers don't end up having an answer there at the quarterback position that he may
Yeah.
feel confident in. I think there's a good chance that he could, hang it up. What about TJ Watt?
Well, see, TJ said that what he was talking about his extension, and which they shouldn't have given him, he
Mhm.
didn't want to play for any coach other than Tomlin. So that's one of the things that facilitated the article I was telling you about. And if a team's willing to trade for him, I would move him.
Mhm.
I would move him right now. Again, he's not a big game player. He's never showed up in the playoffs. I mean, yeah, he got the deflected interception. He returned a touchdown against, I think it was the Chiefs. The only play that looked good the whole game, because somebody else forced the fumble and then he picked up and running in. He doesn't show up in the big games. He's just too expensive. Even if he was making 30 some a year, it would be hard to justify, but definitely not in the 40. So I would trade him if at all possible.
I think you have some points there. With Mike Tomlin gone, maybe he is now more open to
Yeah.
to leaving Pittsburgh. Um, you know, it really could do a lot of wonders for the Steelers if they could get some more high end draft pick, capital. If
Yeah.
a team that sees him as and values him to give up a first, or a second. You can utilize that next year. And then if Mike Tomlin does only take a year off and comes back the following year, the Rooney's already mentioned and said that they're going to look at that draft capital as a possibility,
Oh, yeah.
if he wants to coach somewhere else. And so you can really, really position yourself for a quick ish turnaround. I know it's going to be a rough year, but you can probably really start to position yourself to being a real contender in a couple of years if you leverage some of these players right. Now, I'm not for trading TJ Watt. If he's here next year, I'm 100%. I'm 100% with that. But if they go out and they were able to move him, I'm not against it either. I guess you can call me in the middle. I can see him saying, "Hey, you know what? I want to win a championship." He's won Defensive Player of the Year already. He had the sack record. Maybe now what's important to him is winning a championship. And if he doesn't see the offense, or seeing a rebuild in his future, maybe perhaps he would like to move off. I don't think that would do anything to his legacy as a Pittsburgh Steeler if he went to another team for a couple of years. Similar to
Joey Porter.
yeah, exactly, Joey Porter. And even if he becomes successful and he helps another team win a championship in the next year or so, while the Steelers are still rebuilding, I don't think that does anything to his legacy. I mean, Rod Woodson won a Super Bowl with a different team, so and he's still beloved by the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base. I don't see any difference with that with TJ. What do you think?
No, now I'm not on the fence. I want TJ traded. I mean, I don't care if it's a third round pick, because right now you want to get out from under that contract.
Yeah.
And if you get a third round pick for him, you take it, you're happy. And maybe you hit it, your next Herbig, your next Highsmith, your next Sawyer. I'm comfortable, and I'll be comfortable drafting another guy and rolling with it next year.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. All right, on the offensive side, the big one I think everybody knows the answer to, but Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Yeah, I don't think he comes back either.
I've seen enough. I mean, he could because he wanted to play for Tom. Well, Tom is no longer here. There's no reason. Because I sure don't want McCarthy.
Yeah. What about Mason Rudolph? You think he stays on the team next year?
Again, the backups now is not a backup. He's a good backup for a franchise guy, and you need to fill in for a game or two to keep you competitive. But I want the backups to have the potential to maybe be the starter someday, and I don't see that at this point. I would have been fine with him this year and not brought in Rodgers. You know that.
Yeah.
But where this team is now, I want young guys and guys that could conceivably, like I've heard talk about Kyler Murray and different things. I don't want that. I don't want a retread that's flashed out somewhere else or burn, the bridges and they're welcome where they were. I want a young guy that's still raw, that's got potential. I've heard Malik Willis. Yeah, let's give it a shot if the price is right. I told you Badgett from the Bears. Draft a guy like Chambliss and have Will Howard and let them guys compete it out during training camp and roll with it. But I just think it's for Rudolph's own sake. It's time.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to make the team. Let's see. This one's an interesting one. Darnell Washington as a tight end. Or do you think they start transitioning him over to tackle? Now that Rodgers isn't there, Rodgers supposedly was one of the guys that pushed to keep him as the tight end. He's a bigger guy. He looked like he got bigger as the year progressed. I think he'd do well as a tackle. What do you think?
I think that you keep him tight end one more year, depending on the offensive, the head coach we bring in, an offensive coordinator. You keep him because he's such a dominant run blocker, and he's such a mismatch that way. Especially if you're going to utilize play action in the middle of the field more. But you can slowly start getting him reps at tackle, even in the preseason, and see if he likes it, how effective he is. Because, it's not an easy transition. Larry Brown did it for the Steelers in the 70s. But he was kind of like Washington, Daniel. He was a really big tight end. And you can kind of see his future trajectory. And with Washington, that could be it. But I would still try to.
Villanueva.
Yeah, exactly. I would keep him at tight end for another year because I think he was just finding his footing as a tight end and that great run blocking and receiving when he got hurt.
Yeah, I would keep him there because I'm getting rid of Jonnu Smith. I'm not bringing him back.
I don't think
I don't know if you
remember last year at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
I said trade him. He has no chemistry with Rodgers, and he has no clue. Nobody knows how to use him in this offense.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, why did they keep him around? I'm sure they could have moved him at the trade deadline, and they kept him.
Yeah. Kenneth Gainwell, he's a free agent. Will he be brought back?
I'd like to see more out of Caleb Johnson before I answered that question. I like Gainwell. Gainwell's a heck of a little player. He's very versatile. He can do everything. I think Ward's your starter. I really like Ward. But Ward's the way he runs and his size and everything, he needs spelled from time to time.
Yeah.
I think they need to fine-tune when they use Gainwell. I think there was times they used Gainwell when they should have used Ward and vice versa. And There was times I would like to see both of them in the game.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would try to bring Gainwell back definitely.
I would like to see him come back, but I think
Yeah.
he's going to get a pretty penny in free agency. And,
Good for him if he does. I mean,
there's a lot of holes. There's a
yeah.
lot of holes. And, I liked what he did. I liked his contribution. And I think he's going to get paid for it. But there's a lot of holes. And I think you mentioned, I think what you said is right. Him and Warren, I think, are very similar. And guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think maybe Kenny might be a little bit better than that, but guys that are hard to tackle, shifty, smaller backs. And so more Caleb Johnson, that'd be interesting. But yeah, I would like to see Kenny come back, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Isaac Seumalo, you think he returns?
No, it's time to retire. Just
agree.
because when he gets healthy, he's effective, but he can't stay healthy. Guys, as you get older, those of us that are advanced in age more than others, it just happens frequently. When you try to push yourself to the limits, which you have to even think about playing in the NFL, those injuries become more and more frequent, and it becomes a time you just can't do it anymore. I think we started to see that. Even when he did play, he didn't practice. And we've seen that with some guys in the past. Ogunjobi just recently. And they did the right thing moving on from him, and I think they will see him all too.
Yeah, I don't see Seumalo coming back. He's had a rough year.
Yeah.
And that playoff game was bad. And so
yes.
He got put on his rear, and then the guy that got the fumble recovery touchdown, whole 9 yards.
Blew him up.
Yeah. 2 more. Well, 1.5. Connor Hayward, is he coming back? Do you think he's got a, under a new regime, does he have a position? What he was doing for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most part, special teams, and the tush push, before for Aaron Rodgers. Not saying that's not that's an easy job to fill, but I think that can be filled by a number of players. Do you think Connor Hayward makes it to the team, all the way to the 53 next year? I mean, it's a big advancement. I'm fairly positive he's not getting cut before, training camp starts. But do you think he's a guy that's less likely to make the team?
I think that the day that Cam walks out the door, Connor's gone. I respect the heck out of everything he's done. He's made a good career out of heart and hustle, but also because his brother's on the team. I don't think it should be that hard to upgrade from Connor Hayward. So if Cam's not back, Connor won't be back.
Yeah. I'm thinking they're probably going to go with a more traditional tight end, paired off with Pat and Darno. Maybe get somebody that can block well, a Matt Spaeth type tight end out there.
Hey, if we get a younger quarterback, a more athletic younger quarterback, we can do the quarterback tush push without having to have Rodgers stand back there sucking on his thumb.
That's true. And lastly, the last one for today, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but does Broderick Jones get his 5th-year option?
I don't want to give up on the young man because he has incredible athleticism. I think he's got everything but between the ears. And by this point, I don't see how you can do it. I don't see how you pick up that 5th-year option because I don't see what he's shown. I don't know how much it would be for that 5th year. I think
quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And we seen how good Cook looked. That last game, Houston's got a heck of a defense, and they made Fautanu look bad. Fautanu is a very good player, but that was his worst game of his career by far. They made Seumalo look bad. I thought Frazier played solid. I thought McCormick played solid. And I thought Cook did a really good job considering what he was going up against. And there was a couple times he pinned Anderson. One time he pinned Anderson and Rodgers tripped over him. But it wasn't because he give up the sack. Rogers fell over him. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I hate to give up on him, but I don't think you can pick up that option. He can play it out, and then you see what happens. But I would not pick up the 5th year.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick up the 5th year either. I know a lot of folks have, I was thinking about this since folks brought it up in the live chat. Moving him to guard, Sayamala is getting out. Do you maybe perhaps see what he can do, transition him to guard? He's very athletic. I mean, you'd have a pretty athletic guard there that can pull. The Steelers have liked having guards that can pull and get into space. Could he rejuvenate his career at the guard position? What do you think?
When I look at him, when I look at Fautanu, I see him eventually sliding into guard because he's a little shorter, and with his feet, and I think he's naturally going to put on some weight as he gets older with his heritage and his build. I've never looked at Jones as a guard. I've heard that mentioned. You don't have to think as much at guard on some plays. But you still, that's his biggest weakness is his focus and his intensity. And that's what concerns me about that move. It'd be something if you could have Cook next to him and Jones at left guard. That would be incredibly athletic there at tackle and guard on the left side. I just don't know if it's feasible. But as you say, training camps when you find these things out.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I think we're going to find out quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of battles. And I think that with the new regime coming in, there's nothing going to be guaranteed for anybody. And I think that's good. Shake it up, make everybody earn it. And, if the cream will rise to the top and put the best players and the best foot forward. You know what I'm saying? And
who is your? We don't know anything right now, but who is your pick for the head coach? And who they talked to thus far?
Man, who they've talked to so far. I would like probably Kubiak. I wouldn't mind either one of the Kubiaks. I don't know if they've requested to speak to the other one out there in Seattle, but. I'd hoped that the Steelers would have gone, for Clint Kubiak when he was coming up for the offensive coordinator position. I would like, an offensive minded coach. If they're going defensive minded, I'd prefer Shula, to be honest with you. I want something different. Nothing against like Brian Flores, is just. I don't know. It just reminds me a lot of like, being too comfortable going with somebody who you've had in your building just does not spark the change that I think that the Steelers need.
I don't want familiar.
Right. Exactly.
And I want young, innovative, and in demand.
Yep.
And then, that's smart enough to fill the rest of the staff out. My concern is we talked about it when it was GM and they promoted Common. They brought in Waddle. Yeah. And I like that. They brought in help because you got to have connections around the league. Flores is an alpha who's had a little trouble working with certain people. And we don't need that right now. I'm okay with the alpha, but you got to be able to, let a guy do his job. You know what I'm saying? We've already seen what happens when you don't. And I don't want that to happen again. So I'm like you. If I got to have a defensive guy, mentor, Shula, young, innovative, before I'd go with Flores. But that's just, But I wanted to, you had not said who you wanted. I like Kubiak a lot as well.
Yeah, I'd really like either one of them.
Yeah.
I think I would trust either one of them also with developing a
young
quarterback. I think they would benefit from having somebody from that realm. Even if they win Shula, if they could somehow get Shiohas just because he comes from that, he's a passing game coordinator, passing game, being his thing, I would assume that he'd probably be pretty good at developing a young quarterback as well.
That's a
Uh,
huge jump from passing game coordinator to head coach. That's
it
my
is.
concern with him. As offensive coordinator, yes.
But do you think that the Browns would do that because maybe they see the writing on the wall for the Steelers? They're like, hey, we know what they're going to do. We know that they're going to go with Chris Shula. They're going to try to bring in this guy and they're going to do really well. And then he's going to be a head coach eventually. So let's start that process now. And let's go get that guy because this is a guy that the Steelers are going to eventually want as their offensive coordinator. And so there could be something there. Do you think that could be going through their minds?
Oh, I think definitely. I mean, listen, any team that give the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history to Deshaun Watson, they're capable of anything. But I don't care what team it is. I don't think you take a passing game coordinator and promote him to head coach at 36 or whatever. No, I don't see that.
I hope not. I hope not, because that'll leave that as a possibility. Him as a possibility if the Steelers end up going with Shula as that move. But yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. When do you think it's going to happen?
I'll say, depending on who makes it to the Super Bowl, it's always been 3 weeks. Noah was hired 3 weeks after the search started. Cowher was 3 weeks. Tomlin was 3 weeks. So I think we got a couple more weeks.
I don't know how these things work for the most part because this is the first time I've seen a coaching, or I've covered, the Steelers going out and getting a coach. Do you think, like, for instance, let's just say the Rams make it all the way? Do you think that announcement would happen before the Super Bowl?
See, I don't know legally when it can. I think that as far as the announcement part, I think that the Steelers will have a real idea of what they want to do by that point. But whether they can announce it, they might have to wait till after. That's just what I expect. Because like I said, that whole 3-week thing is just been to me, the Steelers do their due diligence. I think Daniels froze. He said this might happen, so hopefully he'll be back here in a minute. But the Steelers will do their due diligence. They didn't just come up. They don't call it the Rooney Rule for nothing. The Steelers will talk to everybody, give everybody their opportunity to put their best foot forward. Then they'll have discussions. They won't make a knee-jerk reaction with this. This is too important. Because regardless, if some of the guys they're talking to, if they hire them and give them that head coaching job, they won't have to make as many roster changes as they will with others. If they bring in somebody who says, okay, I like how our young defensive line looks, we could go with a 4-3 because Jack Sawyer could easily be an end in a 4-3. Highsmith could do it. There's different things they could do with the depth they have, even if Cam Hayward walks away. And if you trade TJ, they still have some talent there already. In the end, that would affect how you draft. And so that's why it's hard to decide or even predict what's going to happen because we just don't know. It's kind of like you don't know what size tires you need until you buy the car. And that's kind of what the Steelers are. They really don't know what they need to help fill out this roster and rebuild the roster until they bring in the next head coach. So a lot of this is speculation, but we know so much just based on the guys they've asked to talk to and they've talked to already. And I see my buddy's back.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys.
You said it might happen.
I did. We almost made it all the way through.
Right at the very end.
Right at the end, guys. We got a little bonus extra Shannon.
You got a little Shannon 101 there.
There you go. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. I just came back to say thank you Tomorrow night, the Scobros will be on, and then Wednesday, Pump Your Brakes. You can be on that. Is that correct?
Yes, Wednesday night at 8 o'clock.
And then if you want to catch my State of the Steelers, you got to check it out on the audio side only, Saturday at 11 a.m. You don't want to miss it. We'll be back to then. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the like, subscribe. You guys know what to do. Shannon, take us out, my man.